Ladies and gentlemen, we will now move on to the next session, which is a panel session. For this panel session, the topic of discussion will be ESG and value-based intermediations, or VBI, the parallels. This panel session will be moderated by Encik Muhammad Zakaria Osman. Encik Zakaria carries with him a considerable experience in designing, developing, and delivering training in several areas, particularly in accounting and finance, people management, business and operation management, and financial technology or fintech, as well as other training requested by his clients. From his 15 years of excellent track record as a trainer in many areas, he has taught numerous participants who range from executives to senior managers and directors of MNCs and SMEs. In total, he has delivered to numerous companies from various industries and has established himself as a highly regarded trainer famed for his caliber and efficiency. This conference is the second time Encik Zakaria would be moderating for RHB, a continuation from last year's event when Shariah meets ESG. I will now hand over the first panel session to our esteemed moderator, Encik Zakaria Osman, to introduce his panelists and to lead the session. Over to you, Encik Zakaria.
Okay, thank you, Nawal. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very good morning to all of you. Welcome to the Invest Shariah Corporate Conversation Series 2022 theme, When Shariah Meets ESG, the Next Level. We are indeed fortunate to have with us today the Managing Director and CEO of RHB Islamic Bank, Dato' Adi Siddiqui Ali, and Ms. Nur Farisha Abdullah, Head of Debt Capital Market, RHB Investment Bank. Welcome, Dato' and Farah. Thank you for joining us to share your thoughts on the parallel of ESG and value-based intermediation, or in short, VBI. But ladies and gentlemen, before I proceed with the session, allow me to briefly introduce Dato' Adi Siddiqui and Ms. Farah. Dato' Adi Siddiqui has been the Managing Director, CEO of RHB Islamic Bank since August 2016. Prior to joining the RHB Banking Group, he was the CEO of Al Khair International Islamic Bank, the first foreign Islamic bank in Malaysia. And as for Farah, she is the Head of Debt Capital Market for RHB Investment Bank, and she has more than 20 years of experience in the capital market industry. She has led various debt capital market deals regionally in South Korea, Middle East, Singapore, and Indonesia. Welcome once again, and let's start the ball rolling. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, although COVID-19 pandemic has subsided and seen to have less impact on businesses and investments worldwide, the importance of environmental, social, and governance, or ESG factors, and ESG investing continues to grow. This has resulted in a significant increase in the demand for ESG investing, including the Sharia-compliant ESG, where investors are seeking to further enhance investment resiliency. And at the same time, much has been said and discussed on value-based intermediation, or in short, VBI, of which some of its features are in compliance with the ESG, as well as the Sharia-compliant ESG. So to some, it may be a bit confusing or be thought of as a replication of one to another, or could it be a kind of an enhancement of the existing structure? So my first question to Dato', could you please share your thoughts on ESG, Sharia-compliant ESG, as well as VBI, and how are these linked and related? Yes, please, Dato'.
All right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, Zakaria. Glad to be with you today. Good questions. I've been given that questions a lot when I go around. Okay, so basically, before I proceed, okay, I used to start my presentation with a key message or takeaway the point that I want to drive across to the audience. Basically, Shariah ESG, or also known as VBI, is actually in line with the conventional sustainability agenda. Okay, so basically, okay, I think that it needs clarification. So the starting point is, let's start with VBI. So finance involves to a large extent intermediation activities whereby we, the intermediaries, are channeling funds between the suppliers and the users of funds, right? So hence the word intermediation, and being in the Sharia context, okay, the sources, users, and activities within the intermediation process has to be halal in that sense. That's a simple Sharia aspects of Islamic finance, right? But where does VBI stand? Okay, actually, VBI is a concept that was introduced by BNM, Bank Negara Malaysia, for Islamic banking industry back in 2017. Okay, so basically that's a starting point in 2017. And prior to that, I think everyone quite knows that when it comes to Islamic banking, it's the word Sharia comes to the fore. So basically, it's everything has to be Sharia compliant. Means that it is the output for it back then. I would say even up to extent now, when we talk about Sharia compliance looks at the output. So meaning that everything has to be halal kind of thing. But okay, what has been there in Sharia but was never put to the fore, to the front, is actually something which is we call the intended outcome. In Sharia, it is called Maqasid Sharia. Maqasid Sharia has always been there, but with the introduction of VBI, it is put to the front and becomes part of the practice. Okay, and okay, take note of this. The intended outcome of Maqasid Sharia actually in Islam, that's the end. The ends is moving towards, there are 5 things here: protection of religion, protection of life, protection of intellect, protection of wealth, and protection of lineage and progeny. Okay, I would like to highlight it starts with the word protection. Protection means it will be sustainable throughout whatever that we do. So Sharia has the means of protecting, ensuring that, okay, things are sustainable. My next slide, please. Okay, so when it comes to VBI characterized intermediation process or the practices, it is a practice, it refers to practices, conducts, and offerings that generate positive, sustainable impacts to economy, community, and environment. Okay, and it is also consistent with the expectation of shareholders' returns and long-term interests. So what I'm trying to get at here, it is in compliance to even the triple bottom line approach, whereby, okay, it is looking at the 3 P's, which is profit or prosperity, people, and planet. And okay, VBI, in line with the Maqasid Sharia, is also compatible with the UN SDGs, the PRI, Principle of Responsible Investment, and even PRB, Principle of Responsible Banking. All right, next, please. Okay, if we were to track, you can see that that's the UN SDGs, the 17 SDGs. Okay, the ones that's the bedrock of sustainability. Okay, so you on the conventional side, okay, we have the UN SDG, but on the VBI side, we have these 5 intended outcome of Sharia, which is Maqasid Sharia. And if you were to map, basically, almost all fits within the SDGs that we have. You can see SDG 1 to 5, and that is related to the protection of life, intellect, and wealth, and so on and so forth. Okay, you can see, I would say that Sharia, VBI or Sharia compliant ESG is very much in line with the SDGs. Okay, next please. Okay, so this is my last slide. What I'm saying here is, okay, the practice has been Sharia compliant is based on output focus, that everything has to be halal. But with VBI, when Maqasid Sharia, which was all along there, now being put at the forefront, okay, you can see that actually when it comes to Sharia compliant finance, Islamic finance, it is gonna be very much something which I can call Sharia compliant ESG. Okay, and you can see at the bottom, I'm putting there, in lack of any other graphical presentation, you can see that VBI is actually, it is a subset of ESG. In simple terms, what's outside of the green, say, oval is the non-halal activities. So as long as it's within VBI, I can safely say that it is ESG compliant. Okay, so Zakaria, I hope that I've given a short brief just to answer the question.
Okay, thank you, Dato. That's I would say it's a clear picture of that. It's just that I just one more question of the diagram that you showed. You're saying that the the ESG is basically the whole set of the system, and VBI is part of it. So are you saying that the VBI is almost equivalent to the ESG, the Sharia compliant ESG, or
Yes.
is there such thing as non-Sharia compliant VBI?
Non-Sharia compliant VBI, there wouldn't be any, because when it comes to Sharia, okay, it has to be, your question was about, will there be any non-Sharia compliant VBI? So basically,
Exactly.
VBI has to be Sharia compliant, because VBI is comes from the Sharia point of view.
Okay, because these are all based on the Qasid Sharia, right?
Yep.
Okay. That's very interesting, because sometimes we tend to get confused with all this terminology and all this, especially when people are talking about the SDG, people are talking about ESG and this kind of thing, and people tend to get, what are they? Where are we actually moving forward? Okay, so. And again, you're saying that, okay, by virtue that VBI it should be considered as the Sharia compliant ESG. So where do you see the Islamic financial institutions in terms of sustainability? Are we basically at the same pace with their conventional counterparts? Because as you can see, those conventional banks are really moving all out for the sustainability of this kind of thing. Or maybe you can share based on your experience in terms of the IFI. Maybe we can start in Malaysia or regional, or maybe you can even share some of your initiatives or whatever the RHB banking group has actually initiated.
Okay, right. Okay, on that question, let me start with the Malaysian Islamic financial institutions. Okay, so basically, sustainability is not alien to Malaysian Islamic financial institutions, because the idea of sustainability through VBI actually started officially in 2017, when Bank Negara Malaysia co-opted or engaged a group of Islamic banks. Back then, 9 Islamic banks that forms VBI COP, Community of Practitioners. Okay, this COP, back then under the banner of IBIM, Association of Islamic Banks in Malaysia, we were tasked to jointly explore, pursue, and develop an Islamic finance sustainability concept, which was then coined as VBI, and its framework, together with the team from BNM. So it started in 2017 for the Islamic banking industry. So as a result of that, in 2018, VBI was formally launched by Bank Negara Malaysia in a forum. Global Islamic Finance Forum. And this was later followed by a framework called VBI Financing and Investment Assessment Framework, VBIAF, in 2019. Okay, and insofar as record goes and my memory goes, actually sustainable finance from the ESG standpoint, the conventional side, was only introduced in September 2019 when the Joint Committee of Climate Change, or JC3, which was co-chaired by Bank Negara and SC, was formed. It was only in 2019, and I'm one of the members of JC3. So then on, the industry as a whole has experienced a lot of formal, I would say, formal mainstreaming and of sustainable finance. Okay, and I would think that from the regulator's point of view, based on my interaction as being part of JC3 as well, the VBI is taken as a subset of ESG, and it was even proved to a point in such that when JC3 came out with the formulation of CCPT, which is Climate Change and Principles and Taxonomy, the VBI COP's VBIAF, the framework, was even taken as part or the basis of the CCPT. So that is I think that's the answer to your question: how familiar is Islamic banks within the sustainability agenda? We are very familiar, and we were at the forefront, and we are now mainstreaming together with the conventional banks. But somehow, the pace of VBI adoption within the Islamic banking differs, right? Some went to the extent of claiming that pole position in global arena. You can see, I can quote one bank, HSBC Amanah, okay? That's the first international bank in Malaysia to join the UN Global Compact. And even in 2019, they launched the first VBI disclosure, and followed by the world's first UN SDG Sukuk. So that's insofar as the spectrum that we have seen. But as for others, even for instance, RSB Islamic, okay, we have adopted the VBI framework, policy framework, even as back as in 2019, and now together with our parent RSB Bank, we are pursuing the sustainability agenda, whereby VBI is a subset of the whole bigger picture. Okay, and practice-wise, we are incorporating VBI in every aspects of the bank's products and services, and to the extent that even in our risk assessment of credits, okay, we have incorporated the climate risk and other aspects of SDG or ESG into the credit risk framework. And of course, there are a host of other activities, whether credit or non-credit, that we have taken into consideration to ensure that the group not only adopting but practicing the whole sustainability agenda, whereby VBI is part of it, right? So I think that's my answer to your question, Zakaria.
So I was saying that there have been notable strides on the ESG or SRS Sukuk programs, including those led by RHB, which I've read through all these reports. And well, the government is very supportive to this, and statistics, however, show that we are still lacking in terms of the number of ESG Sukuk issued by corporations as compared to the other form of Sukuk. So, and again, when you look at Bursa, not many listed entities are Shariah compliant ESG related companies. So my question to Farah, could you share your why do you see this happening? What are basically the challenges for corporations to actually get into ESG or pursuing or issuing ESG related support? Maybe you can give some of your experience. Yeah. Yes, Farah.
Thank you, Zakaria. I think from a Sukuk perspective, from the capital market perspective, the ESG concept itself, I wouldn't call it something new, given that it has started some time ago. Anything more than 5 years to me personally, is not new. The first ESG sukuk was issued sometime in 2016. And like what Datuk Adi has rightly pointed out earlier, the VBI initiative is a subset of ESG journey itself. So I think from that capital markets, from that angle, especially in the sukuk space, if you look at the statistic, if I can recall it correctly, I think the total issuances as at December 2021 is already about 8.3 billion currently. These are the data from the Security Commission. So if you look at that figure, right, there's definitely some activities in that space. And we do envisage to see more issuers coming to the market to take advantage of these benefits and incentive in issuing this ESG sukuk. But back then, if you talk about challenges, it's still challenges for us currently. The challenges was a lot. It's basically the awareness is one of it. The type of activities, how they are going to utilize the proceeds from this ESG sukuk was also a challenge back then. It's still a challenge, but it's something that we are able to manage it. I would say in Malaysia, right, the regulators has been very, very they have been very, very friendly in terms of making it easy for the industry player to be part of this ESG initiative. If you look at Malaysia, Malaysia has a very facilitative environment, which encourages the issuances of ESG and SRI sukuk. Thank you to our regulators. However, like I mentioned earlier, the lack of awareness on ESG sukuk among these potential issuers, among the corporates, it's really a major contributing factor as to why this ESG SRI sukuk has not taken off in a big way. If we were to compare ourselves, Malaysia, with the global players. It's definitely a mounting task for us, for the financial institution, for the industry player, to continuously educate our potential issuers for this benefit of issuing this SRI ESG sukuk, especially on that utilization of proceeds, like what I have mentioned earlier. If you look at the green sukuk, which was the theme in getting the ESG initiative being issued back in 2016, 2017, it's merely in the renewable energy. You hardly find any activities that would fit into this very specific of SRI ESG sukuk. So these are the challenges, Zakaria, for us back then in getting the ESG SRI move to where we are currently. But of course, the benefit itself, in getting the ESG SRI sukuk go a lot further than just tax incentive that has currently been provided by the government. There's also reimbursement and, of course, a certain extent in terms of the pricing, the lower pricing for the issuer has made it possible for this ESG sukuk to take where we are today. But I think most importantly, when we are educating our client, our corporates, the industry player itself, it's not so much on the incentive, it's not so much on the lower pricing, but I think most importantly is our role in helping to save the environment. So I'm just gonna pause there, Zakaria.
Okay, just before I move to the next question, I just want to get further clarification. When you say about one of the challenges is basically awareness. When you say awareness, are you saying that awareness on the importance of ESG sukuk, or awareness of how to go about issuing sukuk, or awareness of ESG related issues kind of thing? So maybe you can just add on a little bit on that.
It's actually a combination of all. First of all, it has to start with the awareness. Why is it that ESG is very important to me? If you look at from insti investors, for example, they have their own company stand in terms of ESG. So the awareness to create among the insti investors were rather easy. But if you look at retail investors, if you look at the issuer itself, uh, the very common question that for us is, what is in it for me? Is it going to benefit me in a pricing way? Things like that. I think it's very common for a businessman to ask that kind of questions, if you talk from the issuer's perspective. So the education, the awareness that we need to instill among the market player, among the industry player is to tell them why does it need for us to have this ESG initiative. Why is it that is very important for the whole industry player to play a serious role in this ESG SR sector? It's simply because if you look at from Shariah perspective, from VBI, that what Dato' Adi has mentioned earlier, that everything that you do it is about protection, protection of the community, protection of the environment. So whether you like it or not, this is the theme going forward in the financing. If you are not get caught under the VBI policy, you will get caught under the ESG policy. So in any way, whether you like it or not, going towards VBI, going toward ESG practices is the way of doing things in the future. And it's not just in Malaysia, you see that huge move at international level. So this is what we've been telling our client, our investors. If you are not doing this, then you're going to be left behind, because from Shariah's perspective, this is where it's heading to. From ESG, this is where it's moving to. Whether you like it or not, this is what you need to adopt.
Okay, thank you for. Okay, in the meantime, while I have strings of questions to the distinguished panels, members of the floor can actually raise their questions in the question and answer box, and we'll go through the questions, and we'll try to basically try to fit in based on the discussion now. Okay, back to what you mentioned earlier. You're saying that most common questions are like, what's in for us? Why do we need to issue that? I mean, and moreover, and in most cases, based on my discussion with some corporates, you're saying that it's such a costly affair to categorize our operations being sustainable kind of thing. So how do you actually steer your corporates? I know you mentioned earlier saying that you try to educate them in the importance of all things, and especially internationally, it's actually everybody's doing that. And so, but in terms of the Malaysian, I mean, sorry to say, sometimes the mentality, we have not reached to the level of being concerned about the environment or the scale thing. So how do you actually steer your very own clients to do that?
Well, yes, indeed. It was a very challenging task at hand in terms of raising this awareness. It's not just raising the awareness, it's also getting them to accept this ESG SRI initiative, the acceptance from them is very, very important. We can work toward raising the awareness, but most importantly, where is it heading to? How much they are going to accept this ESG SRI initiative among the issuers in the market. So I think personally, I do not feel there's a huge resistance from the industry players. All they need is just the education process and eventually for them to accept it. It's a slow process initially, but surely it's moving towards a good progress. So based on my experience, a large number of corporate clients, they already have their own corporate sustainable framework in place, and reporting to a certain extent in their annual report. So I think that's a good progress, because they already started doing that. So the next step for them will be joining the other issuers in issuing ESG sukuk, and also start adopting this VBI element that what Dato' Adi has mentioned, start considering all these ESG loan as part of their practice going forward. And I think from capital markets perspective, at least from us in the DCM industry, we have been constantly assisting our client to set up this sustainability framework, the sukuk framework for them. We also been working with so many experts, with the external reviewer, in assisting our client to get this framework ready for them. And I think apart from that, we also have been doing a lot of knowledge sharing session with our clients, whether they're ready or not. To us, specifically from RHB DCM, we have been constantly engaging our client. We arrange for a small session where we have like a little education session to a specific group to encourage them to be part of this global coalition. That's what we call it, towards climate change and sustainable practices. And I think also just want to highlight, I think this is very important also, is the pressure from the investors itself, because I mentioned earlier that if you have a insti investors, I would say almost 100% of them would have this ESG goal, ESG portfolio for them to fulfill. So whenever there's a pressure from the demand side to the supply side, so I think this is a very good move to move on the acceptance level from the issuer on this ESG SRI sukuk. It's a slow process, but surely we'll get there.
Okay, inshallah. Okay, that's very much from the debt capital market. What about from the RHB Islamic? How do you actually steer your customers, especially on the retail side? Are they really into this? So maybe that's what can chip in. How do you actually steer your customer? Okay. And bear in mind, also one of your great customers.
Okay, all right, Zakaria. In relation to that, I think this is not only confined to the corporate customers, but now we're talking about, because insofar as the debt capital market is concerned, it's okay. We can be rest assured that it's driven now by the fund managers, the insti, whatever, which has caught up with what's happening in the market. But insofar as what Farah said, that the awareness, the process has been slow, but we have gotten to quite a level which is commendable, I would think, as an industry. And yes, the little nudge that we need to be doing, especially on the Islamic finance, we're doing it at the retail level. insofar as we are concerned. And you can see now that, okay, there are a few aspects to it. One is actually from the supply side. So insofar as banks are concerned, Islamic banks are concerned, we are incorporating, and for RHB as well, we are incorporating a lot of this in our products and services. Just to name you, okay, we have even say in our debit, okay, in our deposit, we have branded some of our deposit to be VBI link, whereby within the deposit, if you are to have a savings or current account with us, you can even contribute part of your hibah towards charity, towards social or the well-being of the society. Okay, we make it in such that it is part of our offering. So meaning that we heighten the awareness on that, and even part of our products and services, we link it to the planet sustainability in terms of, I can name you one, RHB Islamic, we put a stake in the ground saying that we are championing the SDG 14, life underwater, whereby we're carrying the narrative of let's save the ocean. Okay, so basically that's part of what we're doing. But as a whole, I would think that there are two parts to this when it comes to the ESG or VBI in relation to the customer at large, whether it's corporate or even individuals. There are two things, which is incentive and disincentives. Okay, Malaysians, I think we are known to be incentive driven, where the government gives tax breaks and all that. But I based on my interaction with Bank Negara, I know that Bank Negara is going away from the incentive driven things. Okay, this is more, okay, now I would rather like to talk about the disincentives. Okay, if people do not get on to being in the bandwagon, what will they miss out? Okay, it's that the word fear of missing out lah, the FOMO kind of thing lah. To me, okay, that will be it, meaning that will be the one driving it, because the world is going that way. People at large is really getting to the extent whereby saying that I want to be part of the larger community that concerns about the well-being of people and planet. While I'm making profit, I know that you are making profit, but I will be inclined to be the one that makes profit whilst not hurting the society and the planet. Okay, so that is why I would think that in so much as banks or the capital market guys are doing our part in raising this awareness, but once it permeates onto the individual levels, then the force will be greater. Because I would think that everyone, as long as you have a heart, right, will be akin to taking this, that, okay, you want to be doing good. Okay, you be it from the Sharia point of view or the normal conventional point of view, the intent is clear and noble.
Yeah, I just want to add on to Dato' Adi's point, Zakaria, on that note. If you remember 20 years ago, when we talk about conventional business versus Sharia business versus Islamic finance industry, back then, people have very limited knowledge on the Sharia business. When we trying to migrate from conventional to Sharia, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of knowledge that need to be transferred to our community. How important it is to have this Sharia Islamic finance in our banking system. So similarly, it's the same process for us. We are actually moving the industry player from the Sharia business itself. Now we are just making it to Sharia ESG. So really, it's all about education. It's all about putting a important role to each and everyone in the industry player itself. Everyone has a task. For example, the FI has a task to make the sukuk, these Shariah, these VBI businesses moving. From investors has its own task, from the issuer, from the borrower, from the client side also has their own task. So really it's a big community we are talking here. Then the awareness itself is not just to one particular party, it's actually for every party in the industry.
Okay, thank you. I mean, your answers are basically timely enough to basically, because I just received a question from the floor asking, going forward, does this mean that Sharia compliant issuances will mostly be ESG compliant? So did you foresee, by virtue that you're saying that initially when we first started banking, then you have got obstacles, hurdles, and now
so
everybody's
maybe,
like,
so maybe from the capital market perspective, I wouldn't say it's a must, but there's still option from our client, from our issuer to raise their financing. But I think knowing the benefit for all of us to do this, to embark on the Sharia ESG, it certainly have more benefits to us, primarily for our planet, for our environment. If client is possible, they are able to undertake that particular issuance, why not? This would be the way for them to go forward.
Okay. Then I've got another. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So can I add on that? Okay.
Sure.
Basically, I can just give a simple analogy. Okay. Sharia, if it's a Sharia compliant, say that it's a Sharia compliant. That's A lah. That's A, graded A. But of course, if somehow you want to score a plus point, A plus, then you go on for Sharia compliant ESG, which is actually, okay, that sets you apart from the A, yet you will be more marketable, all right? Because in Sharia, okay, halal alone, okay, it's good. But, you know, in Islam, there's something called halalan thayyiban, halal and good, okay? So we can have halal and good is even better than halal.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So in other words, sorry.
Just to add on to that, like I mentioned earlier, the pressure from the investors as well, at least from the sukuk market, the pressure itself from investors that request, that demand for Sharia ESG paper, or for more reason that issuer would typically consider to fulfill this demand from investors.
Okay, thank you. Okay, speaking of that, there's another question from the floor asking as to whether the ESG standard that Malaysian companies or Malaysian financial institutions are adopting, that sukuk in the Malaysian market is most likely adopting the United Nations SDGs or the ASEAN Green Bond. Is it will be confined to this? To this requirement or some things? Yeah.
Oh, yes, definitely. I think what our regulator has done to date is superb, in the sense that making it align with all the international standards that we have. So currently, if you look at from the sukuk itself, all our sukuk issuances is actually being based, of course, we have our Security Commission's ESG guideline, our sustainability link sukuk guideline, those kind of parameters, but it's also backed with these international standards. So to say that is lesser quality in terms of meeting this international standard is definitely no, because for all issuances that we have been issuing in the market since 2015 until now, is all backed by international standards.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to come back to the topic of VBI because that's a very interesting, because I think World Bank has actually launched the framework, if I'm not mistaken, attended this G. Okay, back to the VBI. Will this VBI talking about the intended outcomes of Shariah through practices, conduct, and all these kind of things, and for to create sustainable impact to the community, economy, and environment, and also it emphasizes the on the minimization and prevention of negative impact, which is basically similar to, as you said, Shariah compliant banking concept. But just to be very much focused, will these VBI initiatives change the current banking offerings in the sense that I can still remember when Malaysia started to have Islamic banking, you have this, and then I think Bandagar has come up with this Islamic first. So will there be any such thing as in like whenever you go to the bank, then the bank will say that, okay, I mean the VBI first kind of thing. I'm just throwing the idea. Yes, that's all. Maybe you can, especially from the retail perspective, will there be any kind of like, unless otherwise stated, you will be very much skewed towards VBI, meaning that you, as you mentioned earlier, a certain portion will highly likely to be donated for wakaf or this kind of thing. So I'm just trying, I'm trying to think about it. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting question. Okay, based on what I know in the market for the banks, Islamic banking, banking industry as a whole, a lot of banking or banking group, okay, has put Islamic banking to the fore. In such that back then, yes, because Islamic banking industry was small, and even Bank Negara puts up the 40% mark by 2020 to be there, is to ensure that we get on to a level significant enough, not only relevant, but significant enough. But based on the interaction so far with Bank Negara is no longer putting that, okay, but Bank Negara is saying that it is to be industry-led, okay? To the extent that I'm just not speaking just because I'm heading one Islamic bank, but I'm more than convinced, because what we see in the market, the offerings of Islamic, okay, is as good as conventional. If you talk about conventional being ESG driven, we have the equivalent and all that. And for all intents and purpose, I think for the benefit of the market or customers at large, isn't it good that you have two choices, which is quite equivalent to each other, as good as one another? So then we left it. Okay, we'll leave it to the customers to choose. Then I would say that for the Muslims, definitely is a no-brainer that you will go for something which can basically you can sleep well at night. Okay, to say that you are compliant to your religion, right? But even for the non-Muslim, we see that there's a lot of followings. There's a lot of people subscribing to Islamic finance because they see values. They see the convenience that comes along with it. So I would think that, okay, Islamic finance is there side by side with the conventional, and that's the way it's going to be moving forward.
Okay, that's more on the retail side. Now I'm coming back to Farah. So how would you then, will the approach be different, or will be similar in the sense that the emphasis will be more on the VBI, emphasis will be more on the ESG, on the versus the institutional or the corporate side?
To me, I would think that the approach would be the same, whether it's for both, whether it's for retail, whether it's for big corporates, whether it's for the banking industry, whether it's for the capital markets, because at the end of the day, we are dealing with individuals that form the organization itself. So really, if we are educating the retail investors, we are educating the individual, the small company, and all. They are the one that drive the big organization. So to educate individual is first and foremost the best thing to do. And of course, if you're talking about driving the whole ESG, Shariah ESG initiative, I would think that it would not be any difference for whichever product, like what Dato' Adi has mentioned earlier. We have seen more and more interest, at least from the investors' perspective. We have seen more and more interest from them on investing in this ESG SRI Sukuk, at least from the Insti investors. There have been a thorough evaluation undertaken by them before they actually committing themselves to subscribe to these papers and all. So this process itself goes to shows the VBI element has actually taken place in these investors. So really, to me, educating these investors will not be any difference for any market.
Okay, I like to raise a point. I think Dr. mentioned something like, I mean, not to say that Babajida is hitting an Islamic bank. He's saying that it is imperative for IFIs to ensure that the intent, strategy, and performance of the Islamic financial businesses are premised on the underpinning thrust of VBI. I mean, that's what Dr. was saying. So, and that will actually will eventually create values to the stakeholders and you know, and you mentioned about the underpinning thrust of VBI include the community empowerment, you know, like you mentioned earlier, the 3Ps, and to provide financing to the underserved and scholarships for future talents. And so how do we actually create the enabling environment for that? Because sometimes we may come up with ideas, but where is the enabling environment? Is the environment enable us to do that as what we plan to do? So maybe Dato' or Farah can answer that.
Okay, can I have a go at that first? Okay, because you're talking about enabling environment. One of the enablers is actually the support from regulator, right? Okay. Insofar as if you were to look at the financial sector blueprint 2025 of Bank Negara, all right? It is very much, though it is not stated explicitly that it is VBI, but you can see that there are a few elements there. One of the elements that stands out is actually, okay, it's value-based. They were talking about this value-based intermediation, value-based products and services. And even 2 points I want to get across. The ones that's quite prominent is talking about social finance, financial inclusion. So financial inclusion through social finance. And you talk about social finance, it is, you can't be running away from things in Islam, which is zakat, wakaf, and sadaqah. Okay, though we have that in the conventional, but it's not prominent from my point of view. Okay, so basically, the enabling regulators, even blueprint, provides for that. And of course, at least Islamic banks will be pushing that to ensure that the financial inclusion bit will be there through social finance. And when it comes to, secondly, we talk about products. And this is because I would think that this is the time where you will see even the capital market. Things like Bank Negara is mentioning about this blended finance, whereby social finance will be coupled with the normal finance, be it debt or capital market, okay, in delivering the intended outcome towards social inclusion as well. So here we are, we have the framework, which is governed by the central bank, which is actually friendly towards that. Secondly, even it is including both the debt and capital market, and social finance tools will be used towards this. This is something which we call risk absorbent tools. The social finance tools are risk absorbent tools that can be used even at the capital market to ensure that we can reach out to a greater pool of people, investors, for the benefit of the people which is used to be non-bankable.
What about you, Farah? Do you have any feedback on anything to chip in that question?
Yeah, if you talk about enabling environment, at least from the capital markets perspective, from the investment activities, like I mentioned earlier, the ESG products in the capital markets, we are well regulated. There has been constant alignment of our local standards and guidelines into the international standards. Changes are made regularly to reflect these changes within the international industry. So these are actually part of these these enablers by the regulators to make the industry relevant and not just international. But not to forget the incentive and all those benefit that regulators has provided for the issuers, for the investors. So these are all the catalysts to enable the environment in the ESG to move forward in the industry.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, speaking of the enabling environment, I would say that, with my experience working in Saudi and when the regulator of Saudi government was saying, the Saudi bank was saying that, at least Malaysia, the regulator, Bank Negara has done a very good job in the sense that they start with a nerve instead of putting the meat. So in the sense that they have all the infrastructure first, and you move on. So that's how we started our Islamic banking, and I think we're moving towards on the right direction. So, okay, I think we have less than 10 minutes to further discuss. So I will check if there's any questions from the floor. Okay. Okay, maybe just while waiting for the floor, the questions from the floor, maybe just to wrap up the session, maybe Dato could give a few words. Where do you see? Where do you see Shariah ESG or VBI? And where is heading, and where do you see that maybe in the next 3 to 5 years?
All right. First of all, I'm making a personal statement here. Okay. Which I think I wouldn't run off from reality. VBI is here to stay, because VBI actually it's part of Sharia, and Islamic finance is based on Sharia, and when it's part of Sharia, it has been there, but under VBI is now being put to the fore to ensure that it's being practiced, and the output, this output focus is being really adopted and practiced by all Islamic finance institutions. All right. So basically, VBI is to stay, but when it comes to capital market, insofar as now, when it comes to capital market, it's focused towards Sharia compliant. Whether it will be Sharia ESG compliant 100%. That is yet to be seen. But somehow, even if we won't be heading towards Sharia ESG compliant per se, what we have here is good enough, as long as the awareness permeates throughout, from the big institute until the retail market. As long as it's there, we can be rest assured that the alignment, since the alignment between ESG and VBI is there, you can be rest assured that benefits for the many, be it from the conventional or Islamic, will be seen and will be felt. And for the ones who has doubts and still questioning what's in it for me, there's a lot for you. As long as you have a heart, this is as human as you can get. All right.
Okay, yes, Farah.
Oh, I'm just I'm gonna hold on to it. As long as I have a heart, I will fight for ESG, Dato. I think again, since Dato mentioned that was his personal view, and I think I should also caveat this is also my personal view when it comes to where do I see this Sharia ESG going in the next 3 to 5 years, right? Zakaria, your
Yes.
question.
Yes.
I think personally, I am very bullish about the future of the ESG Sukuk, Shariah ESG market domestically and globally.
Mhm.
We also know that the Sukuk market is very, very important for ESG, given that it has grown much larger than it was, much larger than the conventional bond market itself. Of course, partly owing to the various incentives given by the Malaysian government to develop the market itself, both for issuers and investors. But I think we also have to take our hats off in terms of the initiative taken by the government, by the regulators in educating our community, our business players, whether it's the retail, whether it's individual, whether it's large cap, in terms of creating, making them aware of this ESG need, of this Sharia requirement, together with VBI initiative by Bank Negara. So kudos to our regulators. Thank you to them who are working very hard to put everything in place, putting all this relevant infrastructure for our domestic market to propel in this segment. Also, I think if you look at the service provider as well, back in I have to admit, Zakaria, in 2014, in 2013, back then, there was a lot of parties, international parties, approach me whether we would want to team up with them to start this green sukuk. Sorry, back then it was the green bond. Sukuk was not really an element back then. And I said, no, this is something our market has not familiar. I don't think this is something that I can educate and get them to kickstart this whole process. But look where we are today, in less than 10 years, that's the direction that we are heading to. So if you ask me, where is it going to be in the next 3 years? I'm giving all my heart, like what Dato' Adi said, to make this market growing larger and deeper, at least in the next few years.
Okay, thank you very much. I think in a nutshell, you can say that in the next 3 to 5 years, VBI is no longer Greek to us. It's like, oh yeah, fine, it's a VBI. It's something like, what's that? So I think, thank you very much. We are running out of time. On that note, I wish to, on behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to thank Dato' Adi Sadikin and Ms. Farah for spending your precious time to share your thoughts on this. And at the same time, I'd like to thank for all the questions that we received from the floors. So on that note, wabillahi tawfiq, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank
you.
Thank you.